I'm Jim Pick. I'm the director of the Center for Spatial Business at the University of Redlands. And I'd like to welcome all of you to this special event tonight. With that, it's our pleasure to introduce tonight Dr. Kostas Goulias.
Thank you, Jim. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm honored to be in a special year, giving a presentation in a special year for your center. But the talk today, it's customized, tailored to the center and to what you do in the special business center you have in University of Redlands, and I hope generate some interesting discussion. The title is long, but really we are trying to figure out how different businesses appear and disappear from specific locations, and do they dissolve? Do they close completely their doors, or do they move somewhere else, and where do they move and why? So and quite a bit of this work actually, I lately, the last 20 years, I guess, I don't do anything alone. I rely on working with brilliant people like Srinath Navulaparthi, who is now a scientist in the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, and Adam Davis, who's a postdoc at UC Davis. Srinath did his dissertation on the first part, so the first part actually relies quite a bit on some work we did with Srinath, and then we move into a couple of other case studies. So first, I would like to cast the whole meeting we have today in terms of the policy and the motivation we have for doing this. And it is really something all Californians should be proud about, is the Senate Bill 375, which is a legislation that doesn't only have mandates, but also teeth in terms of funding for projects. It comes out of AB 32 to protect our environment from emissions of pollutants and greenhouse gas emissions, to alleviate the impacts of climate change. And to do that, SB 375 advocates, dictates, if you want, to coordinate land use decisions with transportation decisions. And for those of you that know, land use are decisions at the city level, transportation are at the region level, at the state level. So here comes a Senate bill that forces everybody to work with each other. And typical policy measures, policies, if you want, is transit-oriented development, increased density and correspondence of the metro stations or the regional trains, have a neo-traditional design of neighborhoods, in essence, European style, the businesses at the bottom and the residences on top, and then complete streets, which means allow any type of movement, walking, biking, transit, and less cars, but also architectural design like the image that you see over here, which happens to be happening already almost like a grassroots movement with the COVID-19 impact on cities, but not in the way we envision. So if we want to have these policy measures, and if we want to study land use with transportation jointly, then we need to analyze what are the actors that operate in the city. So we know how to do land use modeling in terms of population, economic activity. We call it synthetic population generation. We can recreate the population of the entire state and give them a life in a day. And that's where the first two pieces that you see on this slide means. But then we need to understand how different agents act. And today, in this talk, we're going to talk about events that business establishments or firms experience and how that relates to locations, space, place are the key words that we're using, and also what is the relationship they have with accessibility. Accessibility is the ease of providing opportunities to participate in activities or to have customers. So the background on this business evolution comes from what some of the Dutch that started this scientist called thermography. In essence is taking demographic principles at the micro level and use them for firms or for business establishments. If I say firm, they means a business establishment, a single McDonald's in essence. And we'll see that this has implications when we consider franchises. So the thermography actually has a micro representation of the urban spatial economy. And it is ideal for integrated land use. And it has much better connection with transportation, regional planning policy, but especially transportation, because we can assess the impact of a business establishment on the network and the association of transportation improvements on individual businesses. So if we want to represent this as the life cycle evolution, and we start from year T and we go to year T+1, in this case it's in Santa Barbara, and it shows that we started at 1 year at 15,900 business establishment, and the next year we ended up with 14,000 businesses more, which means we have formation or births of businesses of a very high number, solution or deaths of businesses of equally high number, but not as high as the births. And then we had in-migration, like when immigrants come into the city, but also out-migration, that they moved out. And so if you do this simple demographic equation accounting, then you start with a certain number of businesses, you end with a certain number, but now these are events. So the events of forming a business, dissolving a business, or moving out. Within migration, although it's interesting, we are not going to look. So the fundamental events we're going to talk about is formation, relocation, dissolution, and the spatial distribution of the economic activities in the region are very, very important because, for example, I would like to know how accessibility to healthcare will evolve over time, and where are these healthcare facilities going to locate, and how far are those from the residential development. They're important to predict how destination choices will change. For example, in the city of Santa Barbara, since the years that we did this initial study to today, we had the creation of a place that's called the Funk Zone. There are 2 or 3 streets close to the ocean in Santa Barbara that have restaurants and wine tasting places and all kinds of other tourist attractions. Well, that changed the spatial pattern of moving, but also modify the economy of Santa Barbara. And then a pandemic came, and this became a major corridor between the main street and the side streets of the funk zone of activities in Santa Barbara, but took activity participation from other places. So this dynamic is what we want to understand, model it, create scenarios about it, and then institute policies on computer and test them whether or not they're viable and decide whether or not we want. So if I were from a geography viewpoint, I know that there are quite a bit of geographers in the audience, we want to add the geographical dimension to business processes and understand if they play any role. Of course, they play a role, otherwise I wouldn't be talking about them. And also to add more detailed representation of the environment, the spatial environment. And that's part of my laboratory, the idea of representing the built environment in as much detail as possible to understand how that impacts the life of people. Of course, we need data. So in throughout the case studies I will show you, we're using extensively the US Census data of the year 2000, 2010, because we're looking at trends. There are block groups, but also tiger line networks. We don't want to go above the block groups, tracks, etc., because it's too high of a scale. We're looking at population, household structures, and employment from the census. And then the centerpiece of data we use actually is this National Establishment Time Series database. Wells is putting together all this data, creating, in essence, a panel, period observation of the same units, the business establishments, over time for the entire United States. But we use only California here. And there are about 6.7 million businesses. The raw data, the original data come from Dun & Bradstreet, the record of businesses. And they're classified with the 6-digit North American Industrial Classification System, NAICS, but we're using only the 2-digit, as you will see in a second. And we classify every business establishment in one of 16 industry types. We also did some zooming in, if you want, the establishment, and we used tax assessor parcels to find out the area and the tax value for some analysis of economic efficiency, but that's not something I will talk about, just pointing out that data is in the public domain. It exists for more analysis. Plus, we use detailed roadway network and public transportation accessibility indicators in some of the studies that actually require recording roadways at the level of local roads. It's extreme detail, big data, some people call it, but I hesitate to use the term big data in transportation simply because we've always used big data, never called it that. So I will try to illustrate 3 case studies, starting with the first one that I will spend a little bit more time because I defined some of the terms that I will use in the other ones. And this is from Santa Barbara County, and it's straight out of Srinath's dissertation. And the paper that we used is mentioned here. So the Santa Barbara County, for people who don't know about the county, has about 400,000 people, residents, 215,000 employment. It is a typical case of jobs and housing imbalance in California because we have commuters coming from Ventura, which is south of Santa Barbara, and even San Luis Obispo, which is north. So the business establishments that we are exploring in this are about 62,000, and the average employment size, means employees really, is about 10, and they have average sales per establishment of a little bit less than $1 million of US dollars of 2010. I told you about the different types of industries. I will show you the list in a second. We use this because it is an old year 2000. We did not have any other source of network data. We use the Tiger Line network of the US Census. It has even addresses and things like that. These are the number of nodes. If you think of graphs, nodes, and links, or edges, if you want, and they're very small in size, so very detailed. And then population, household structure, the land area, and the price pool. So this is where Santa Barbara is, Channel Islands. Many of you know it, you're Californians. So this is the land area, and by the year 2014, we were expecting 440. I think right now we reached already 500,000. And the peculiarity of Santa Barbara County is that we have the north and the south very clearly separated because they are divided by a national park. And The North Santa Maria is mostly, well, it has, of course, wineries and agricultural production and some other kinds of services, and a small college. Santa Barbara County South has UCSB and the Santa Barbara Community College, but also a quite large variety of technology companies like Raytheon, etc., that also service the Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is about somewhere around here, that sends rockets up in space for a variety of reasons, including defense. So the South is advanced technology and education and a variety of services. The North is the agricultural center. In terms of population, now we are equal. This slide is from the years of the study, slides 10 years ago, but Santa Maria grew quite a bit. Okay, so the events. This is the definitions I was mentioning before. We will have relocation, which is a change in address of the business establishment from one location to another within the NETS database. It is possible that we missed some of them, but we don't know. Formation means when for the first time, the first year in which the business establishment is recorded in NETS, so it can be in the 2000, 2001, 2002, etc. Dissolution is the last year at which the business establishment was recorded as living, or the year before the business establishment disappeared from the database, as simple as that. If a business establishment was formed outside Santa Barbara County, it's not counted, and we only know that came in, but that's an in-migration which we did not tax yet. So if we look at the 1990 to 2010, it's 2 decades of data, business by business, all of them, then you can see that there is a clear increase. This, the green line is the increase of business establishments until the recession hit, because it had a devastating effect on some businesses. And then the red are the dissolutions of businesses, disappearance from the database, and again have a peak exactly due to the after effect, the 2008. But then the interesting part is the birth of businesses, that we have different spikes depending on business cycles of different types, depending on new businesses moving into the area. So that's the reason the spikes and the difference between the red and the blue line are very, very interesting to us to see whether or not there is something relocation or something. So if we dig a little bit deeper in the 16 industries, we see, for example, that we had a tremendous increase in professional services. And because we have the addresses and the XY coordinates of these businesses, professional businesses, we found them be in residential neighborhoods. So, and of course, I have the explanation of that. Then we looked at the relocation by industry type, and we see different movements. We don't see a tremendous relocation of professional services, but then we start to see manufacturing not expanding or actually contracting, and we also see that other services start to close. So what does that mean? What is the relationship? Well, it so happens that quite a bit of technology firms started closing down due to the recession, and that created the creation of professional services. People did not move and started doing consulting from there. So we have one solution, one finding already, that when technology firms disappear or modify or morph into something else, the technical people go home and they start doing professional services from there. And they record that those services, they have a DUNS number, and they start operating as independent contractors. That's Santa Barbara. We did not look at it. So in terms of data processing, to study the different events, we got the georeference data from NETS, the census tiger line files, the blocks, the Santa Barbara County tax assessor. We did over here, Srinath calls it data fusion. We merged all these, and then we correlated the firm events or the business establishment events with anything else that we could get our hands on. So I'm not going to spend more time, more detail on how we did all this, but I will point out that we know with spatial econometrics or some of the event history models we used, we can study localization and urbanization. We can study the impact of on the formation, dissolution, relocation of the internal characteristics of the business establishments. We can look at whether or not regional transportation access had anything to do with these events, like distance to regional airports that would be important for the technology firms, or access to transit that could be important for retail. And then this is the part that we were mostly interested. We wanted to see whether or not businesses that locate at the center of the city are more vulnerable or more resilient than businesses in the periphery. And there is quite a bit of theory on the central place theory that people have tested in the past. So how do we do it? The method is we use what is called panel-based binary outcome model: to die or not to die, to form or not to form, to relocate or not to relocate as the dependent variable. And as independent variables, all the other ones that I explained, we test them if they are significantly different from zero, and we come up with the hypothesis testing inference. We account for what's called serial correlation because we observe the same in the industry business locations over time. They are correlated, so we have a time trend that we estimate with this model, and then we can look at the effect of time. Now, location. Real estate tells you location, 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 but it's totally unclear what they mean. So we want to operationalize location using network analysis. Some people call them complex network analysis. This has been geography for quite a bit of time. And you can see the definitions. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I will talk about the betweenness centrality more. Betweenness means that if business establishment is in the main street of Santa Barbara, and that main street, which is called State Street, is also the street where all the shortest paths from any origin to any destination pass through that street, they make it a central place. And straightness, on the other hand, if you have a grid urban development, you have higher straightness. If you have cul-de-sacs, like in residential, you have very low straightness. And then remoteness and richness does something similar, but in a more counterintuitive way sometimes. We computed each of these at multiple spatial scales to test all of them as independent variables. So 2.5 kilometers, 6, 12, and all of the county. And when all is said and done, we get something like this. I'm going to focus on this betweenness. Santa Barbara has a main corridor that starts from Stearns Wharf, goes up State Street morphs into Upper State Street, and then Hollister, which continues into Goleta, all the way to a resort at the end. And that corridor actually is the central location with specific points or intersections functioning as the major centers. So the hypothesis is do businesses that locate around here are more robust financially than businesses that locate further around? The remoteness actually is one way to find out where is the center of the different cities. So you can see Santa Barbara City proper, Santa Barbara City of Santa Barbara. Goleta is over here, very flat. Lompoc, which is right next to the Vanderbilt Air Force Base and provides quite a bit of labor, plus it has a couple of prisons. And then Santa Maria, which is a vertical grid development with its center at the Santa Ynez Valley is the wine country of Santa Barbara. You can see there is a constellation of Buellton, Solvang, Santa Ynez, Los Olivos, small town-like places where activities are concentrated. And then Cuyama is up in the desert, in essence. So what we see here with and then straightness shows that Santa Barbara has high grid development, so that's Santa Maria and Lompoc, and then the richness I will skip that. Okay, so when we all is said and done, when we look at the formation of businesses as a function of their internal characteristics and the neighbors, tell you about the neighbors in a second, and the location in the network, we find that the relationship between central place, location, and the probability of forming a business comes out to be different depending on which businesses you are looking at, as you would expect. And if we look at all the firms together and we don't distinguish by the type of business establishment, well, all of these indicators of centrality play a role. Some of them negative, like the straightness. But then that's not good for us. We want to know retail, for example, is not influenced by anything else except but between us. What does this mean? Well, businesses form exactly at the center, more often, exactly at the center of the city, the most competitive location. But professional services, no, they tend to be located where the richness is higher, which means in the residential neighborhood. So, and looking at this, and then looking at the people that work in these professional services, gave us the answer to what I was telling you of the impact of the recession, technology firms closing, and the employees becoming consultants. When we look at the relocation, we see that actually manufacturing has a completely different behavior than retail, except when we look at very, very wide buffers, like 12 kilometers. And then the dissolution, again, the retail has a completely different influence. It's influenced in a completely different way. They actually leave, they dissolve more often from the central locations that attract them the most. So and we have an explanation of this. So one of the explanations of this is that actually retail does move into the center of the city, suffers from extreme competition, and then closes the doors and moves somewhere else. That's why we have a high turnover for many retail locations in Santa Barbara, like in many other cities. We also see that population density does attract more businesses. So this is the downtown area of Santa Barbara. But we also have another place in Santa Barbara that is called the Isla Vista. Some people call it the ghetto of the students. Is one of the top 10 most dense areas in the United States, according to the recent census. So very, very high density. You cannot tell when you walk through, but that's because students live in many students live in the same apartment more often than other people, so that makes very high density. And the retail employment density, number of people per square meter, number of people per business establishment, is also downtown Santa Barbara. And remember the corridor I was telling you, this is State Street, Upper State Street, and then Hollister. So this is a very, very clear corridor. I can tell you also that this is exactly what motivated the regional plan of the Santa Barbara County to create along here the transit-oriented development, because they said, oh, we have a high population, high employment densities along this corridor. So if we increase the density, the residential density, by building more and more apartments along this corridor and beefing up the public transportation service, we have solved some of the congestion problems of Santa Barbara. Jury's out on that. All right. So, and for manufacturing, actually, we see clustering downtown along what now is called the funk zone. So some of this manufacturing disappeared and was replaced by wine tasting facilities. But the major manufacturer is in Goleta. It is around Raytheon and other high technology firms that work for Vandenberg Air Force Base and are startups of the universities. So key findings from this study. The businesses that are in a higher densely populated areas are businesses that stay, they don't move. But also those are the locations with high probability of formation and failure. Competition creates this probability of failure, and then the counter, the hope of surviving the competition, attracts more businesses. Prominent in this is retail, trade, and healthcare. Originally with Srinath, we thought that healthcare is more stable but it's not. And the hospital stays there, but different doctors and different services like testing, etc., or they don't survive, they leave, and somebody else replaces. We do have agglomeration economy, because what you see even with the naked eye, the restaurants line up along this corridor, retail for clothing lines up together. But we also have some diversity. For example, eateries tend to be attracted by healthcare facilities for lunch breaks, etc. We have some regional factors. Goleta and Carpinteria have a higher probability of failure, and Santa Barbara itself a lower. Ownership of the land is also playing a role that we here. And then key to transportation people like me is whether or not transportation access plays any role. And yes, retail and public and transit stops are positively correlated in terms of the formation, and proximity to regional airports actually has exactly the opposite impact of what we expected, higher likelihood of failure. So maybe some technology firms locate close to SPA Santa Maria. Both Santa Barbara and Santa Maria have airports, and Santa Barbara is more active, and apparently this type of access to transportation is not very good. Or the self-selection, the firms that go there are higher risk, and therefore they fail. The firm internal factors are very, very important because of the liability of size hypothesis, which means that if you start a small business, you risk more to be outperformed in terms of the revenues, and also age. Younger firms are more likely to not to survive. Older ones have a historically strong clientele, so they survive. Yeah, we can talk in eternity about this. But we also looked at the technical efficiency, and we found, I will not talk a lot about this, but we did find significant differences, not in terms of the type of business establishment, but of individual businesses, which tells you that, oh, there's something else that makes technical efficiency is the ratio between revenues and costs. And it tells you that maybe there is something else that creates an efficient firm, not just the type and the location. This is just to show you the spatial berths in the period. Because we use the panel model, we were able to fit a spline, in essence, time variable that tells you how things happen. So you can see for every 4 industries that we really paid attention to, that for the formation for healthcare services, we had an increase over time, controlling for all the other factors, right? And then in the recession, we had an exponential increase in healthcare services formation. And in retail, this went down and then up again. So you say, okay, formation, but what happens with dissolution? And you can see the dissolution goes, the total effect, time effect, negative, except for professional services. So, manufacturing closes down, professional services go up. And this is the employees of manufacturing moving into suburbs. And in parallel, we did not have any in-migration. So major conclusions or general conclusions. We have the center and subcenter type of cities, and they play a different role in the formation. The network centrality indicators have a major pronounced impact on firm events. So it was a good thing we did the computation. And the urban centers are breeding grounds or incubators, if you want, for new firms. And they have high probability of survival, but also very high probability when compared to other places. Solution. Right. Very, very important. One of the questions is location really driving all this, or something else is happening? Well, the internal characteristics of size and age are what drive quite a bit of so we should not forget that. Case study 2. Since we did all this for Santa Barbara, we wrote a proposal and we said, okay, why don't we study statewide what happens? And we cannot do central place or centrality study for the state. So we had to do, let's say, a more approximate analysis. So on your screen, you see the retail, manufacturing, healthcare, and professional services, the same type of graphs we looked at it. And you can see actually California is going up in professional services. There's more and more independent contractual work. Health establishments are going up for the year span we looked. Manufacturing went up, went down during the recession, went up again, but stabilized somewhere. And retail actually is fairly high. We need to see today what happens with it. So we looked at this, and then we looked also at BA input-output matrices, and different businesses have different relationships. So we said, okay, let's repeat the same study with the panel probit model for the whole state, millions of businesses, and see if we find similar things. We don't have the centrality stuff, but we have, average employment density. And, this is the Los Angeles area, with Santa Barbara having less density, the Bay Area, Sacramento, and San Diego. So over here, we find that land use density plays a significant part in relocation decisions, but there is still this formation of a business and failure of a business in a higher density environment. And I think Jim actually looked at this study and found it interesting. We also see that there is a positive impact on mixed land use. And this is very important for SB 375 because one of the questions is, okay, I have this squeezing more people in the same footprint. Are these businesses going to survive? And if they are different and they complement each other, the answer is yes. And then we find a differential impact on land use and transportation accessibility depending on the types of businesses, but similar to what we found in Santa Barbara. So I won't repeat this. The final one is, can other factors be found that have a strong positive influence on birth and death that we did not find before? And the answer is, I think, what is the time? 6:48. So it's here, so I should be wrapping up, right? So we did one further case study in Los Angeles this time. And our question, we're transportation people, and our question is, does access to opportunities by public transportation and private car increase the probability of survival of a business? So we focused in this area. This is really the core of the Southern California Association of Governments region, includes, I think, Redlands. You can see Redlands here. You are somewhere over here. And you can see on the left-hand side, the business birth formations. On the right-hand side, the business solutions. So this should give you an idea that, it's a corridor, Santa Monica, downtown maybe, then the 405 corridor, then maybe the 101, where things are happening. So we looked also at distance to airports. We could not do longitudinal study in this case because we had accessibility computed only for 1 year, 2008. And these are the accessibilities. These are the number of business establishments you can reach within 20 minutes, and clearly downtown, the old downtown and the new downtown of LA have very good accessibility by public transportation, including walking, taking the bus, changing routes. And the greener it is, the better it is, the more jobs and opportunities you can reach. But when we do this with a car, the green is really deep. So obviously, this explains also why 85% of the trips are done by car. So findings, and I'm going to close with this. Certain types of mixed use are more beneficial than others. So retail establishments in manufacturing areas are more likely to fail. Obviously, they don't have customers. Manufacturing establishments near retail more likely to fail. So there's this separation of the business establishments. Although there are no ordinances that say you cannot have light manufacturing right next to a mall. And professional services are more likely to fail anywhere. There is competition for high real estate, so people move to their homes, opening their offices there. And but retail businesses benefit from presence of workers in professional services because they can work for these retails, and manufacturing and co-location with information industries are going hand in hand. And then there are major differences between different sites that are site specific. So the business survival is not just a matter of high turnover versus low turnover locations, but there are all kinds of other ramifications that influence them. One major finding, of course, franchise and non-standalone are a franchise versus non-standalone penalty was found in 2008. In essence, the franchises had a higher turnover than independent, and that's because the mother company was closing down all kinds of stuff. It's happening in the malls right now. But very, very positive for transit. Transit is a big influencer, especially in downtown LA, because retail firms actually use transit accessibility. So LA Metro would be very, very happy to see. And of course, this was I'm going to stop with this. This is a probability map. We took the probability that we predicted, and we mapped it out. And you can see similarities between the formation and the death of businesses. But there are some pockets, for example, over here, that we have higher failure than formation. So this shows to us that we can find out, where do we lose our businesses, and then look at local reasons. There's something more when we look at the different types of businesses, the relationship they have with transit accessibility, and that's probably the next study. And with this, I'd like to thank you for your attention and your patience.
So with that, we'll finish up our event for tonight, and hope to see many of you soon again.
Thank you.